Winning with people. I'm delighted to read that this is one of your 4 non-negotiables, because I would believe that winning with people is pretty important, having spent my whole career in that particular space. It is interesting that it's the 4th of your 4 imperatives. And I always sort of smile quite wryly that in every company I've been and looked at, they say how important people is, and then they list it last. And I often wonder how many companies would do very well if they didn't have any people. So when people have this wonderful sort of catchphrase that says, our people are our most important asset, it's quite a nice phrase, but they don't usually mean it. So what do most meetings get started with? It's usually the numbers around finance and sales and so on. And those things are pretty important, aren't they? But my contention for you would be they only get delivered through people. So thinking about the Asda case study then, before I start to tell you the story, think about this. Asda as an organisation employs 170,000 people, so it's huge. It's not international because it's purely UK, but they are spread over 360 locations in the UK. They're not paid very much, most of them. So many of those people who are in that 170,000 are on minimum wage or just above. So there's no particular motivation in the fact it's small and intimate. It certainly isn't. There's no particular motivation in the fact that they're very highly paid and therefore they're motivated by money. And the work itself is pretty routine. It's not a calling. No one says, I've been called to go into retail. People might be called to be a nurse or a teacher, but it's not a calling. In fact, most parents would not want their offspring to work in retail. So if the work's not motivating, if the money's not motivating, and it's a huge amorphous mass, how on earth did Asda ever become the best place to work in Britain in the Sunday Times survey and stay in the top 50 for 5 years when Boots and John Lewis, Marks and Spencer, some of the kind of more middle brand retailers and people like Tesco and Sainsbury's, none of them ever got in the top 100. How on earth did we do that? So what I want to do is try and give you a flavour of some of the things that we did to try and drive engagement, to make Asda feel different, to make its performance different. And the first thing we did, which may or may not relate to yourselves in the same way, because I think the business models are slightly different, but certainly within our business, this was a key issue, and this is why I list it first. We hired, as a business, exclusively for attitude. Because up until the time Asda was broken, most retailers, and many still do today, hire for skill. They hire people who've worked in retail before. And most retailers will look for people who've got retailing skills. I think it's completely irrelevant. Because what you have to do when you hire someone like that is you have to deprogram them. And you have to untrain them in the system that somebody else has used and teach them yours. So retail skills aren't really that relevant. The thing that we thought was the major differentiator was around how we serve the customer. We wanted to have a unique selling proposition around being the friendliest. So we thought we would go out and hire people who were the friendliest. We looked for gregarious people. Didn't care whether they worked in retail or not before, didn't care how old they were, didn't care what their background was. We were looking for extroverts. And we started to run half-day assessment centres for hourly paid shop floor workers to actually change the Richter scale on that particular issue. Now, I don't know anybody in the world still who runs an assessment centre for hourly paid shop floor workers. There are lots of assessment centres for graduates and middle managers and promotions and so on. But when the retailers heard we were going to do this, they thought we were insane. They said, you know, we can hire people from off the street, it's not a problem. And I said, well, if we want people who are going to be really friendly, we've got to try and find those friendly people who are by nature outgoing. And it will make a difference. So we started doing it 15 years ago. And for over a decade, we were, on the perception scores, the friendliest retailer, and we still are today. The second thing I want to talk about is communication. Now, we've already talked about that as one of the things that is a weakness in your survey. Now, communication is second on my list of things that you need to do to get great engagement, because I believe, after hiring the right material, communicating well is absolutely the most important imperative that you can do as a great leader. And why do I say that? It's because every organisation in this world communicates. That's for sure. And we all grumble, do we not, about how many emails we get. I used to get about 300 a day, by the way, when I was working for Asda. and I used to respond to them all within half an hour. I must have been mad, but that's what I did. And I was still getting my inbox and my in-tray and all my mail and all the things I used to get before the days of email. They always promised me that, you know, when we went electronic, then the physical stuff would disappear. What a lie that was. So we are bombarded, are we not, by communications all the time. And why do people not respond to communications very well? Is it because they're belligerent? No. Is it because they're stupid? Certainly not. It's largely because they are bombarded with information. Every day of our lives, we consume massive amounts of information. And if you think about how you read a newspaper, and I'll read the daily newspaper in about 5 to 7 minutes, what do? I look at the front page, I read the headlines, I look at the pictures, and I flick through. And if there's something that catches my eye that's important, I read the article. That's how we all consume information. And yet, when we come to the company situation, we want people to have read the whole newspaper, cover to cover. And why did you not read paragraph 4b? Because there was something really important in there. And I often talk to people about when we put out either a pension communication or a share communication, and it's kind of this thick, because the lawyers have crawled all over it. It's got all the caveats in you could possibly want. Do people read those things? No, they don't. Do people know what's in those things that's important? Yes, they do. How do they find out? They talk to their best friend in the organisation. They say, what's this lot say? And their best friend says, the two things you need to know are this and this. So why didn't the company pull those headlines out and say, you can read it all if you want, but the two things you need to know are bang, bang?